That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm Shane Raymer. You're listening to the best of That Sober Guy podcast, and we help people stay sober. If it's your first time listening, I want to welcome you. I'm so glad that you're here today. Thank you for tuning in. No goodbyes, just sneak to the We will be back in 2024 with all new episodes and guests, so stay tuned for an awesome new year full of great content. Now, if you're looking to quit or cut back on your drinking through the holidays or as we approach the new year, we have one of the best 30-day alcohol-free challenges out there, and it's helped hundreds of men all over the country quit drinking alcohol. It's called Quit Drinking Dude, the ultimate men's guide to quit drinking alcohol and stay sober for 30 days or more. And in honor of the holiday season this year, we want to give you $25 off when you sign up today. You get 30 podcasts in 30 days, plus daily exercises and a private men's group to keep you connected and hold you accountable. You can sign up today and use the promo code 25 off. You got to spell it out, 25 off at checkout. And you can do that at thatsoberguy.com. You can also find more information as well as other podcasts, other resources, or you can contact us all once again at thatsoberguy.com. And on behalf of the Raymer family, we want to wish you all a very fun, a very happy, and of course, a very sober-minded holiday season. And we hope that you enjoy the best of That Sober Guy podcast. I got Nick Rucker here. It's great to have him back on the podcast. Nick, my friend, how are you, dude?
Good. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to see your face. Good to connect. You're in Boise, Idaho, originally from Nebraska, but you're out doing some training out there. How's Boise treating you?
Dude, it's not bad. It's a good view. A lot of good views, I should say. Yeah. And there's I get about 1 day a week off. So I think the next time, next Sunday, I'll venture out and go check some stuff out. But I'm still trying to figure my way out or figure myself out and figure it out how to get around and everything else. Yeah. So it's not bad. I like it.
Yeah, I do too. We took a trip out there. The kids and the wife back in July last year, and just kind of hung out. It was the summertime, so it's a little different weather than probably you're getting right now. But dude, lots of water stuff, lots of outdoor stuff. I so wanted to go to a Boise State game. They got that stadium there is really, really cool looking. Didn't get to go.
Blue turf, isn't it?
Yeah, the blue turf. Yeah, that whole campus is badass. It's a good little spot, man. I think you'll enjoy kicking around a little bit once you get out.
It seems pretty, just the people I've met so far seem pretty laid back. Like it takes a lot to get anybody worked up about anything. And, like coming from a town of 500 people in Missouri originally, that's my jam. Yeah. There's people that don't get worked up about anything.
Yeah. Just mellow.
Even with the pandemic going on, I'd be curious to go back to my hometown and find out if they've heard about it yet. So.
I still think they're like, whatever, just screw it. Yeah, definitely different than California, that's for sure. It's funny how each individual state, tends to deal with it a little bit different, or area, depending on where you're at.
Right. But I've traveled pretty much all over the United States since it last year. Yeah. East Coast, West Coast, down south. And no offense, but California was the most extreme I've seen. Yeah. And it was just kind of eye-opening that, this is on opposite sides. The coasts are where it's happening. And not to say that's where it's happening and not to downgrade what's actually going on. But the simple fact that, very seriously, taking it very seriously on the coasts. Yeah. Especially close to New York. Whenever I was in New Hampshire and in Connecticut, I was like, all right, they know people that were working in the hospitals there and everything else, and all the people that were dying. And I was like, all right, so I can understand with that information that you have why you would, take it very seriously. Whereas in Nebraska, it's just been kind of like, it's happening. But it's just like, we're kind of relaxed about it, and
it's different everywhere. I think it's like, it's hard to like blanket the whole country, you know what I mean? Just, specifically speaking of the United States, obviously it's a worldwide issue, but it's definitely different on the coastal areas. It seems to be different where the leadership differs. We'll just put it like that. I mean, different leadership in different areas seems to affect people differently. I don't know. Really weird, but I know that we're trying to do our best to obviously be safe and be smart. But at the same time, what are the effects of mental health, on people, on kids, that this is having? Relapse, addiction. I mean, man, the kids out of school, like there's just so many dominoes that have fallen from this. And it's been a pretty tough thing for a lot of different people. And then, people who have gotten sick and stuff, of course, too. But, any case, dude, I'm glad you're doing good. That's good. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think you can agree with me as far as like what you just said is a good point. The mental health side of with kids. And it's not 100%, my girlfriend, she's got two 11-year-old and a 12-year-old, and then we've got a 5-month-old together. And she, just watching them, one of them, he just got really stressed out at one point. And it was just because he doesn't leave the house. And I was like, I don't know what we can do, to get you out. It's winter. And in Nebraska, that's not the best cases to be in.
It's not a California
Nobody wants to
winter.
Be outside.
Yeah.
Right. And, it's not only stressful on them, but it's stressful on us at home when we're like, I can tell from Leslie that she's super stressed out just finding things for them to do. And then that stresses me out because she's not happy. Yeah. Happy wife, happy life. And that's not the case.
Dude.
Or it hasn't been recently. And so I think that that's a great point, the mental health side of things. And I did the hospital back home, and I know you're not on Instagram currently, but the hospital back home had asked me to be an ambassador for their mental health gala.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
A couple of days ago. And I had the past month or so been kind of like promoting that and
good.
Getting donations for their mental health ward there. And it was kind of eye-opening because all of a sudden I'm on a platform that's getting seen by a lot of people that I grew up around. And talking about sobriety, there's a reason, that, I drank and everything else. It was the culture where I grew up, and a farming culture where it's just bush light and you get drunk. And it's funny looking back on it now, like I always thought that it was okay. And eventually you get to a point where you can drink an 18-pack a day and like, you just keep going. And I thought that was normal, because all the farmers did it. And all of a sudden I find myself, and I had like an epiphany as I'm shooting this like kind of short little promo for it, is that I'm fucking like not in that world anymore. But all of a sudden I'm able to tell everybody there that, hey, let's fix this. Like that's awesome. What you're doing isn't okay. And it may seem like it and all this. And, dude, and I haven't shared this, but I think 2 years ago, the guy, I think we all remember whenever we start going into, getting sober and everybody from the beginning is the person that we always fucking remember. Like we meet a lot of people, but there's always that first guy and there was a guy from back home who basically, he asked me if I would come and talk at the Christmas, the AA meeting and share my story because he thought a lot of people in the area back home needed to hear it. Yeah. And at the time I was like still kind of getting used to like public speaking, I guess. And I was super fucking nervous. And I remember like by the end of it, dude, crying and everything else, because I was looking at a room full of people that I've known my whole life. And all of a sudden these people that I kind of idolize because of drinking, they're looking at me like it's a complete opposite. It's a 180. And I'm like, and so this guy, and I'm not going to say his name just for the simple fact that, like, I don't know, like, how big of a deal it would be, but he had called me many times and checked in. He was older, you know, like, it's always the older guys, like 70s, 80s, that are just like, they want to help. They know how it works. And like,
absolutely,
right out of the gate, you think, this is weird a little bit, but it's okay.
Yeah, but it's cool at the same time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because I think, and here's one of the things that I've pinpointed as I've kind of gone through this journey and trying to self-discovery and everything else, is whenever I would drink, I was always looking for somebody to look up to. I was always looking for a father figure to kind of just confide in.
That's good.
I needed somebody to pull me out of the fucking darkness and be like, dude, get your fucking shit together. And it was weird, but that's how I kind of saw him as it progressed. And I was like, right time, right place. This guy's doing it. He calls, you know, he called me regularly. You can tell he's a sponsor, you know, that's what he does.
Yeah.
And I never like officially said, hey, you're my sponsor. But then I found out, you know, like a couple of years ago, he passed away. Oh, wow. And I was like, you know, like sitting there kind of like, oh, well, you know, he was older, you know, old people die. And, but that wasn't the case. You know, he had taken his own life. And,
oh, wow. No way.
And I just found that out like 2 nights ago, you know, and I'm like sitting there watching this, and his family was on there talking about it. And I'm like what? Like,
did he go back to drinking?
I don't think so. I think it was honestly just depression related. And they didn't come right out and say everything about it, but there was a chat going on, right? While this gala, it was a virtual gala, and I just typed in the chat, I'm like, I have to say this, like, this guy saved my life at one point, like, wow. And I feel fucking absolutely crushed that I couldn't save his life. And I didn't know that this was going on. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. You know? And so I kind of carried that around with me the past couple of days. And I think I needed to hear that, like, in the strangest way. I'm coming up on 5 years of sobriety. And I think that was like, that's like the angel kind of looking over me. I think that's
that makes sense.
The old, you know, the higher power, I guess, saying, hey man, like, you need to hear this year because you need a fucking second wind.
Yeah.
And
like, you don't got this. Is that what you're kind of getting at? Like, you don't like we always have to be vigilant because anything can happen regardless of how much time we have.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that like the past year with the pandemic and everything else, and like kind of like what we were discussing, is I was having these dreams and everything else where I was drinking, and I'd like wake up and I'm like, fucking panic, like panic attack. Like, I'm like, this didn't fucking happen. Like, how could it happen?
Yeah.
And, you know, then you realize you're like, okay, I'm awake. And that happened 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why is this happening? Okay. In the back of my mind, alcohol is still there.
Yep.
And it's slowly creeping back up. Something wants to hold. It's like fucking Freddy Krueger. Like, I fall asleep.
Keeps coming in my dreams, damn it.
Yeah. And so, you know, and then I heard that story, and I was like, I'm not like, I do get emotionally impacted by things, but like, that was like fucking earth shattering whenever I heard it, you know. And I was like, okay, so let's recap or not recap, but like, let's reset, let's rethink this. We need a game plan if shit goes south. And so that was more like, started looking at, you know, I've got a 5-month-old and everything else. And I could not fucking imagine stumbling into the house drunk and going up, you know, with him in bed and Leslie in bed and crawling into bed and pissing all over him or something, you know, like,
just
I couldn't fucking imagine that. And so, you know, just with the fuel, keeping it going. And I was glad that I heard that. And, you know, I've kind of worked through it the past 2 days. And
good, man.
It's, I went back to his page on Facebook, you know, like Facebook is weird about how they say in memory of on people's pages that have died. Because
oh, really?
There's like some sort of algorithm that says if enough people post like pray or thinking of, or somebody passed away, they immediately say in memory of.
Dude.
And honestly, I think in some way it's good, because you don't want people that don't know posting on their page like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Like, obviously.
And then his wife finds out and has to tell him, well, I'm sorry, but you know, he passed away or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And so I went back and went through his page, and then I was like, do I dare click on messages, you know, because it's going to scroll through and I'm going to see everything we talked about, you know? And I think the thing that made me feel like a piece of shit was I opened up the message, and you know how old people are, dude. Like they share these like, hey, pass this on if you like love somebody.
And all the copy and paste ones. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
An angel will look over in your seat if you like.
Pass this on to 37 people, and we will make sure that you are blessed.
You'll go to heaven.
Yeah, you'll get 17 Werther's Originals with your purchase.
God damn. Werther's Originals are good.
They are. My grandpa loves them.
But I saw it, and that was the last thing he'd shared with me, and I didn't respond to it, and I just was like,
shit.
Fuck, you know. And then I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, that's not me. I'm not 80 years old, and of course I'm not personally going to share something like that with somebody, but this is their language, this is their love language, this is how they say, hey, I love you, I care about you, and I shouldn't fucking judge, you know. Like
that's good.
My
man.
Mom, you know, and she shares that stuff with me, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm gonna fucking respond to every, you know, like every time somebody writes those to me now, it's like at least say,
even though you don't want to.
Though I'm like, I would never share it, but it's still, I think it's the thought that counts, and letting them know, hey, I appreciate you reaching out, like, and saying something.
It's a good lesson, dude. I'm glad you shared that even with me and on the podcast, dude, because I just, so we're clear, I've done the same exact thing. I'm not on any of the social media platforms, but I've had plenty of those in the past. And I'm like, why are you sending me this shit? You know what I mean? I'm not going to repost that. That's stupid. Like I would never post that, but you're right. That's somebody's love language. That's how somebody, maybe they want to connect or feel a certain way that they sent this out. Maybe they really believe it. Who knows? You know what I mean? But even if you don't repost it, I think that's a good thought. I mean, if it's somebody that you do care about, you could say, oh, hey, John, or hey, Linda, or whatever the hell your name is. Thanks for sending this. I appreciate it. You know what I mean? Have a great day or something. You know, I mean, that's a really good point, man.
Yeah. Sometimes I think just the acknowledgement is enough, you know, and I think that the past year, just still, I feel like going into the 5th year of sobriety, it's like you start to like appreciate little things here and there. And then also you're saying, you know, what's enough for me. And I think looking at that, like saying, for the instance, you know, somebody sharing something like that, if my grandma were to share that with me, I better respond, or else there's going to be, you know, I would feel like shit the whole day. Yeah. And
otherwise you're not getting underwear and socks for Christmas, motherfucker. That's it. You ain't
right. Yeah. And, you know, and to me, it's like, hey, that's enough. That's, you know, to respond and say, hey, thank you for sharing that. I feel the same way. Something like, I'm not going to repost it. And, you know, Tweety Bird doesn't know how to get to heaven. So...
But like you said, the acknowledgement is the point of that, and that's it. So it doesn't have to be, you know, the full, you know, cut and paste or whatever. No, I think that's good. Hey, real quick too, so I don't forget. What is your Instagram again? Is it Nick Rucker Country? Also, like the website?
It's Ruck Country.
Oh, Ruck Country. Okay.
Country. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I want to make sure I get that in the show notes so people can follow you if you're on Instagram there.
Yeah, I totally. I miss you on. Seeing your posts on Instagram and everything. And like I said, I was out in California recently and drove by the A's stadium, and you were the first person that came to mind when I saw that. I was like, dude, I got to be fucking close to it. Like, you know, like,
yeah, you were.
But I'm glad that, you know, I'm glad you shared that podcast and that I listened and like, and you said in there, like, hey, shoot me a message on my, on my webpage. And you're like, oh, I'll never, you know, I don't typically respond to emails, but call me, you know. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna send him an email, he'll respond to this.
Oh yeah, no, I was so excited when I heard from you. I told Jess, we were in bed, I go, oh shit, I said Nick hit me up, I said check it out. And it was great too. And I mentioned this to you before when we were chatting, like I had literally just put the contact form up like the day before, or whenever I recorded the podcast. It was like that same day. But yeah, man, I just had to jump ship, dude. I jumped off Facebook in 2018, and then I still had Twitter, which I didn't really use often, but you know, I had a good community of people on there. But I just, you know, some of the values and ideas and all the shit that was going on, it was not aligning with what I believe in. And so a lot of people are like, you're fucking crazy. How are you going to just like let go? And you're like, you got a lot of people that follow you and, you know, it can grow and whatever. And I was like, hey, you know what? I built it one time, people followed, I'll find a new spot. So that's why we jumped on Locals, which has been really, really cool. It's really just like Instagram, but it's way more free speech based, and it's private, and you know, you can get free content and stuff too. So that's been cool. You got to jump on there, dude, and check it out. It's a good little platform.
Okay. Locals, is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's called Locals, and there's a whole bunch of different people on there that have their own little community. You could start your own community on there. It's pretty cool. What the hell is that in the background? Is that my wife? What is that? I think my wife's like grilling something up in the kitchen or something. I can hear it in there through the microphone. It was tripping me out for a second. Anyways, dude. So you got a book out, dude. Time Cap. That's awesome, bro. Like I didn't even know you were writing a book. When did it come out? What's it about? What's going on with that?
Dude, it took. I kept it pretty much under wraps because, and the main reason was because I'd never thought I'd finish it, and I was like, I'm not gonna hype it up. Yeah. And then not finish it, and everybody's like, what the fuck? You know?
Totally.
It took 10 years to write, 10, 12 years. And it was basically detailing the, I guess, psychological effects that deployments have on soldiers that are overseas.
Wow.
And honestly, it was from my own thoughts, you know, and everything. I didn't, and I think like what we talked about on the past podcast was like, I didn't live that whole, Hollywood blockbuster soldier life whenever I was overseas. It was more of the day in and day out, just keep them busy.
It's like a grind,
you know, and your thoughts. Yeah. And then in Iraq, that was, you know, like that was pretty much day in, day out. And it's then to get to Afghanistan in 2012, 13, and people start dying, and to really see the effects that it has on somebody, even if you don't know who they are, that you're over there protecting, you know, the United States, fighting for your country, and these guys are dying, and, you know, you see them and you're kind of like, a piece of you dies a little bit. And I talk about that in the book. Wow. Where you don't have to know somebody in order to feel that, you know, and not to get too deep into it, but the looking at somebody's body getting carried through the ranks and knowing that, you know, their family doesn't even know they're dead. And I'm sitting here looking at them. All these people are sitting there looking at them, and you're just sitting there picturing them getting the phone call, you know. And I just kind of remember I remember the pain in my back standing there, because it was always like we had to stand there forever. And eventually you would just sit there and say, you know what, the fucking, I don't care. Like, this is, you know, obviously it's worth the pain of standing here and everything else. They deserve this. And to get to, you know, the after deployments and the struggles with alcohol and going through and failed relationships and and just not kind of living a hard life and going to the point of wanting to kill myself, and facing that wall, ending up in the hospital, and just really like, what am I doing? And then you finally, you hit the day. Everybody remembers the day, I guess, that it happens.
Yeah.
And to coming out of rehab and thinking, I'm never fucking going back to that life again. And we talked a little bit about this before also. It's like, the people that are going to go into rehab or the people that want to get sober. And, we have a spider sense about it. Yeah. People that aren't going to get sober. Yeah. And all we can do really is just be there for them when they need us. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like coming out and going to into CrossFit and getting my life together. That's kind of where the book leads into and ends gets into music a little bit, but that was, it took a lot, dude. There was like,
how long did it take to write it?
Where, 10 years total. And then editing was 1.5 years, almost 2 years.
Yeah. The editing process sucks, huh?
Oh, dude, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful lady in Alabama who actually was an English teacher in Alabama. And she was the one that told me, you need to publish this. She read my journals.
Nice.
And I said, I know I ain't never written no book, I don't know nothing about no writing.
Writing a book, God damn it.
I ain't going to share my feelings, man.
Oh, that's funny.
And so we went through many nights where, we're going through and I'm reading this and I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, I can't fucking share this. Like, I am not comfortable sharing this with anybody. I talked about how I wished, we didn't have communication in Afghanistan because I would like to just go there and not have to worry about life back home. Because there was enough stress going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just get away from it because, honestly, there was a point where it was like, I get that your fucking life's okay back here. Like, I don't need to hear about it, and it's where it's mostly whenever you're turned up and fucking like all this shit's happening and you're trying to explain to them, hey, this was my day, but I can't tell you about it because I can't fucking talk about it on the internet. Like, you can't share what's going on while it's going on. You can only share about it afterwards. And that's whenever, going through the book and I talk about, I wish I didn't have to talk to my family as often as I do, but since it's there, I feel like obligated to talk to them.
Yeah.
But I would like to check out and just not.
Do you feel disconnected like when you're talking to them even too? Just because you're kind of like, you're not able to fully connect almost, or you don't want to. It's going to be tough.
Right. Yeah. And, just feeling like I want to be completely open with you about what's happening here and the emotions that I'm going through, but I can't because it's going to fucking jeopardize my integrity and who I am right now in this place that I'm at.
Yeah.
And I can't get weak right now, honestly. And talking about, fuck, dude, there's like, I had to reread the book because I finally read it last week. And because I'd never actually picked it up and read it since it got it published. And I think in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't want to face this right now. Like, because it's very real and those emotions for me start to come back. And I think going through the parts where there was an Afghan local who had his legs blown up. He was missing his legs and they needed O negative blood, which O negative is the universal blood for everybody. And of course I'm O negative and walking down there, donating blood, which probably went right into his body. He died anyway, as I'm walking back eating cookies, wow. Like, and that's going through your head, that's what people don't see whenever they donate blood in the United States. It's like, you're just donating, but you don't know where it goes. Yeah. Me, I fucking knew where it was going. This guy is dumping blood out of his legs.
Damn.
And So, and you're walking off, fucking skipping into the sunset while this guy's dying. Well, it wasn't that dramatic, but
but I got you. Yeah, it's like,
yeah, you just feel bad, and you kind of carry those things along with you over time. And as we were editing and going through, there was many nights where I was just like bawling, like looking at the computer screen. And I'm like, I can't fucking go through this shit again. Yeah. And just talking about the hardships and just the day to day. And I think there was a point where for like 2 or 3 weeks, I stopped talking to the lady that was helping me edit the book. And I was sold on the fact that I wasn't going to publish this. I was like, this can't happen. I don't want people knowing this stuff.
Yeah.
And then there came a decision day, basically, where she wouldn't leave me alone about it. She kept texting me like, hey, when are we going to work on this again? When are we going to work? And I just ignored her. And I felt bad because like she obviously didn't know what was going on. And so I finally just told her, I was like, I don't feel like I'm worthy of sharing this. For one, I feel like the story is not sufficient enough. And I feel like my time over there. And then as I started to say those words, I'm like, wait a second, pump the brakes. Like, there's 100% of the Army, 1% of the 1% of that 100% sees combat overseas, and that's a very, very small margin of soldiers that have seen actual combat. And I'm like, this is a side of the story that nobody sees.
Yeah,
that the guys that are going over there, and it's a job, and I was like, this is going to appeal. I take that back. I don't want to say appeal because I'm not trying to market this, but this is the voice for the common everyday GI Joe, the general issue Joe.
That's good. Yeah.
This was for those guys. And I needed to do that. And in the back of my mind, I had every single guy, whenever I was publishing or whenever I was posting on like Instagram, the pages, printed out pages that I was doing this, and I was getting comments from, and I know they were fucking joking, but it still pissed me off. But they were just saying like, oh, what do you have to talk about? Blah, blah, blah. And
oh yeah,
that's what was getting in my head. Yeah. I was in my own head. And so eventually I got to the point where it came to D-Day and she was like, what are we doing? And I just remember getting that text and I was like, we're finishing this. And, we finally made it through to the end. And then it got to the end of, I've never published a book. I don't know how this works. I've published music and it's fucking simple. You upload it to something and then it puts out here and here and here, and I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah. Let me ask something really quick. Any of them motherfuckers ever publish a book?
No.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So real quick, because I get haters too, and I'm sure we've all had them. Everybody who's listening, at one point in your life, you've had a hater. People hate, dude. That's just the way it is. And the best thing we can do for that is to let them do it and know that, we know what's right. We know what we're doing is the right thing, and we know what we should be doing, because it is easy for that kind of stuff to get in our heads. And, just like you, it's gotten in my head before, and it's probably made me not do some things that I probably should have done in the past, but they're always going to be there. And, what's the saying? It's like, oh fuck, dude, I don't know. I totally just drew a blank on that. I had a good saying. I thought it was good for at least, but anyways, okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to point that out, but you were saying publishing music, definitely way different than publishing a book. Once you get to that point.
Yeah. I know my way around music publishing and everything else, but this was weird. So I started, of course, go to the internet and start figuring it out. Somebody's done it. So they'll be able to walk me through this.
Yeah.
And then I found a publishing company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I was like, well, I guess this is it. I'll submit my, what I have and see what they say. Submitted it. And they were just like, we'd love to publish this for you and everything else. And with everything else too, like publishing music, everything costs money. Yeah. And so, out of pocket, it was I'll be happy to break even. It wasn't horrible, but it was still, it was a lot.
Still cost money.
Yeah. But I sat there at the end and was just kind of like, I remember submitting it, like the final edited copy. And I was like, literally a big weight just like went off. And I was like, it's out of my hands now. Like, awesome. I'm no longer in control of saying yes or no. It's there.
It's out there. And, out to the world.
Yeah. And, since it hit bookshelves and everything else, it was, I've promoted it a little bit, but I was just like, I think people that want to read it will find it. I'm not looking to make any money off of it. It never even crossed my mind. It was more of like, I just need to do this.
Yeah.
And people have reached out to me since and just said, dude, like, this is fucking good, we want more, and so I'm sitting here like, well, fuck it, I don't have another story, like
I don't have another 10 years to write a book right now. It'll probably be faster the second time, but no, it's funny because it's like you it's almost like a release. Like I remember we did you hear about a lot of people doing this. They'll take a list, maybe it's their 4-step even, and then they burn it in a fire or whatever they do, right? Maybe the book was kind of like that was your way of kind of facing some of that stuff of your past and letting it go. You know what I mean? Putting out that's probably why you felt that when you finally hit publish, like it was like this huge relief of freedom. Like, man, okay, boom, I've let that go now. It's out of my hand. You're not holding on to it anymore, man. That's really fucking cool, dude. Congratulations on that too, dude. It's awesome.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think everybody should do it. Well, not maybe write a book. It's just, that was kind of like extreme, I guess, on my part, but just talking about, the stuff that, so here's a story I'll share. And my life has been kind of like fueled by music my whole life.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because I was listening to your podcast a few weeks ago with the old drummer of Papa Roach, your buddy
Dave. Yeah.
And I was like, that clicked in my brain. I'm like, holy shit, I haven't listened to Last Resort in like a million years.
I know, that sounds great.
And so, of course, I get on there and I'm like, I follow him and then I see all his posts. But then that kind of lit another fire, was thinking, dude, I remember back in probably 2002, 2001, or 2003, one of those days, one of those years, not days. But I went to a concert. And some of my favorite bands growing up were just no-name bands that nobody, had ever heard of. They were just local to Missouri. And there was a band called Green Wheel. They had a hit song back in the day, and they're from St. Louis. And so I went to the concert at the Blue Note in Columbia, Missouri to watch them. Drove 3 hours, and I remember like, wow. Oh, this was a big deal. I'm right out of high school. I'm going to drive 3 hours.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I'm going on a road trip. Oh yeah.
Hell yeah. And we got a motel, and back then it was crazy because you had to like download the MapQuest directions and
print them out. I know, dude. That's so crazy.
So I go and dude, back then I was still trying to network with everybody. And back then I go through my old emails on my Hotmail account and I've got all these emails of writing like Miles Kennedy of Alter Bridge and like the lead singer of Greenwell, this other band, Leo. And then I wrote this band In the Clear. So In the Clear was a rock, kind of like I don't know who to compare it, mainstream rock band from Nashville or Memphis, Tennessee. And I'd never heard of them prior to that. And like they sang this song and I was like, dude, I fucking love this song. So I stuck around after the show, and because in hopes of meeting the lead singer from Greenwell, because I was just like fucking fangirling. And
that's great.
This guy comes out and I go, dude, back then it was like, hey, do you have any advice for, somebody who's up and coming? The standard question from everybody that's in a band.
Yeah.
And, and he's like, you know what, dude? He's like, the only thing I can tell you is you have to write about things that nobody else talks about, because it makes everybody uncomfortable. And
that's good advice, actually. Yeah.
And he was like, you have to write about it because nobody else has the balls to say it. And I was like, okay.
All right. Thanks, bro.
Party on.
Party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth. Let's go fucking get drunk.
Does this guy know how to party or what?
That's so funny.
So I took that, and that was in the back of my mind whenever I published that and made it, put it out there. It was like, yeah, this is something that obviously nobody's talking about. We're still talking about 22 veterans a day commit suicide.
Wow.
And is there an end to this, or what's the story here? Like, what are we doing to combat this? And I'm sure that, like the programs that I am a part of, like Guitars for Veterans, that donates guitars to veterans who are struggling with PTSD. That's a great avenue.
Oh, that's awesome.
But nobody's talking about it. Nobody's, publicly talking about like, hey, I had emotional fucking issues, emotional trauma from being overseas for as much as I did.
Yeah.
And you have to look at it as like the last year of your life, Shane. Like you look at like the pandemic. That is going to be something you carry around with you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Like you're always going to remember it. And it's even though you didn't get, the coronavirus, or somebody, didn't get the coronavirus. Most of us know somebody who did, but the simple fact is just because I didn't get it doesn't mean I didn't live through it, you know? And that's what I started kind of like comparing that to. It's like, well, just because I didn't fucking go overseas and shoot people in the face and kill everybody left and right that I could, doesn't mean that I didn't live the war.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
And I was in a foreign country and in a time of war, and it was fucking traumatizing at times.
It sounds like you're giving a take on it. Like you said, I can't remember what percentage you said, but it was low of people that actually, are in combat and actually, like you're saying, just, shoot them up, and the shit that they make movies about, right? So people are, Sniper, that's the first one that comes to mind. Chris Kyle, right? Something like that. That's this, or Marcus Luttrell, another one. But the majority of men and women who are going over there are doing a lot of the things that you probably experience, the daily grind of being away from home, of being disconnected, separated in a foreign country. There's so much shit psychologically that does to you, I would imagine. I mean, I can't even imagine. I've never been in that situation myself, but it's got to be uncomfortable as shit. There's lots of things that you deal with, and I think that's great, bro, that you were able to write about that for 10 years, capture those experiences, and then, dude, that's going to relate to so many people who don't relate to the big blockbuster movie story. And not to minimize that anyway, they're great stories and unbelievable shit too, but that's the average day-to-day stuff that people don't see. You know what I mean? You're really giving a window into that.
Right. And I think just talking about that, getting more people comfortable talking about that, I think just letting people know, hey man, you have a voice. Like why shouldn't you share that voice? And I think even whenever I do public speaking and everything else about my time overseas and whatnot, I walk up there, and I've walked up in rooms that are full of like Vietnam vets, World War II vets, and, Desert Storm. And I'm sitting there giving my speech about like, well, this is what I did, take it or leave it. The guys afterwards come up to me and they're like, dude, I'm so glad you shared that. We need more of that. That's what they're saying.
That's awesome, dude.
To me, I'm like, okay, I get it now. This makes sense. It's like, we've got a generation of guys who, when the war started, 2001, I was a sophomore in high school, and it took 12 years or so, whatever it was, before it was like, oh shit, I remember watching this on the news when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Now I'm here fighting the same fucking war.
Wow.
And I did the math the other day, and we've been in Afghanistan for 19 years and like 4 months and like so many days. And we've, as a society, I forgot that it's going on. And
it's the endless war.
2,500 soldiers, 2,500 soldiers that are over there that, and Leslie, my girlfriend, her brother recently just got back from overseas, and, and just sitting there thinking like, these are people that are going through a whole bunch of shit and they don't know how to share it. They don't know where to find, where's the safe place.
Yeah.
And in a kind of in a generation where like safe place is looked at as bad, I think we need to reiterate that it's okay,
to talk about stuff,
we can still be men.
Yeah.
We can still be men. We can still be masculine and lift weights and fucking tell people what to do. But
just not our wives. We can't tell them what to do. My wife told me, what?
That doesn't work. That's
what
not
you
okay.
Say?
Yeah.
I'm learning.
And but it's okay to be vulnerable, and share that, hey.
Yeah. Well, just talking about stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was his experience, your lady's brother? Like, was it, I mean, because I think, and I know we don't really have time to get into it right now. Maybe we'll have to do this again sometime, but I mean, there's so many different ways we could go right now, like just with the whole, the endless war over there. I mean, God, it's just like 19 years. Like, come on, like what are we doing? You know what I mean? And,
right.
And these men and women's lives are being affected. And you don't hear a lot about it because you don't hear about the everyday ins and outs, and then coming back, trying to transition into a regular life and a 9 to 5 and, a family. And like, that's gotta be like just insane, especially if you don't feel like you can talk about it afterwards.
Right. And I think I was telling Leslie the other day before I left, I said, I was like, I know I'm going to be gone 6 weeks. And I was like, you're going to have to reintegrate me into your life whenever I get back. Because 6 weeks is like, that's a long time, and things change. And I think if I was sitting there thinking about it, I'm like, what would I do if this was a year-long deployment again? And they kind of leaving, my son, who's 5 months old, and coming back, and he's a year and 5 months old, and thinking, dude, I just missed all of your life, like all of your first year of life, and there's a lot of guys that do it. And I'm like, I was kind of lucky in a sense that I didn't have, whenever I went on deployments, didn't have to give that up.
Yeah.
Didn't have to leave that behind whenever I left. I was always very fortunate that I left my family, and I'd seen them my whole life. So it wasn't like, it
wasn't a new baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
and I
go ahead.
Just that just takes, I think, a toll on families and guys, and even sharing my story, there's other guys that's got to have, oh dude, I left my kids and came back, and like everything went to shit, that's kind of the common theme, is that, we went overseas and came back and our whole life was different. And we never reintegrated right. And divorce happened and everything else, those are the stories that I always hear. And so that was the purpose of the book and why it's out there now, and why, I guess, I know that there's a lot of guys probably have read it and said, good. Like, like, I'm glad somebody said it,
It's good, man. I know you mentioned too in the book that you talked a little bit about music, and I'm even wondering now, after kind of hearing, thanks for sharing that too, kind of giving us an insight into, the book and just kind of some of your more personal stuff that's hard, it's not easy to share that stuff when it's close to you. And then, like you said, you bring up a good point, like you didn't read the book. Like I'm the same way. I don't listen to the podcasts. I record the podcast and that's it. I hate hearing myself. And I realize, like, part of it is you have to relive some of those conversations or stories or things that you went through, and we have to feel. And for you and I and other people out there who struggle with alcohol or drugs or whatever, our problem's not always alcohol and drugs. I mean, yeah, that's obvious. Our problem is feeling. We don't like feeling sometimes. And so to relive a lot of that shit is difficult. You know what I mean? And you know, sometimes it takes a lot to really dive into that. But you mentioned music, and I was really curious when I knew we were going to record, just to see how music is going for you. Like, I have a lot of friends in the music business, whether they're artists or whether they are just in the business itself. And entertainment in general is really, you know, it's tough times for a lot of people out there who are in that business just because of everything that's happened in the last year. How's it going for you? And then do you feel like music like has helped you transition, like when, you know, that's an outlet, in other words, like to be able to write, to be able to perform, to be able to have that creative outlet that can help deal with some of the stress and some of the, you know, past stuff too.
Yeah. You know, I'll be completely honest. I haven't hit it this year as much as I thought I would.
Yeah.
And I was going off of probably 6-7 years of playing 70 shows a year, you know, and being the one-man band and being the guy carrying stuff in and out at 1 a.m. and all that, I was like, dude, I'm fucking over this a little bit to some extent. And I'm glad that, I was kind of glad that things hit when they did. And, you know, you start questioning your commitment to what you believe in, your morals, I guess.
Yeah.
My moral compass was telling me, like, dude, we're not writing. What are we doing? You know? And I was pretty hard on myself for a while. And I've got shows booked this year and played a few last year, but I finally had to just kind of sit back and be like, are we still in this? Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we in this? What are we doing? And is this fun anymore? Like,
that's good.
And why was I doing it before? Well, before I was doing it because I didn't have a lot else going on, you know, and playing that many shows, but I had to be completely real and in my face about it too. I was like, are you playing shows to promote your original music, or are you playing shows because somebody wants you to play at their wedding and you're a good cover artist?
Yeah.
And I was like, the second thing. And that's what people are paying for, you know.
When you're making some money too, I mean, right? You're making money. I mean, it's a side hustle, a side gig, or maybe it's, I mean, I don't know exactly what that looks like for you. Maybe it's a full-time thing. That's a lot of shows, but either way, you're getting paid to do what you love to do. So, but like kind of having that moment of, you know, trying to be real with yourself is not always easy, you know, to do.
Right. And I think I've got some cool shows coming up with Mark Chestnut. He's an old 90s country artist. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I've heard of him. Hell yeah.
Playing with him soon in July, and getting back out and just doing some like original music oriented stuff.
Dude. Good.
And I'm like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And so I look at guys like probably what you're referring to, friends that are in the music industry, and I don't consider myself in the music industry. I never really have, because I've always had a full-time job while this is going on. And I've looked at it kind of like, is this something we need now? You know, to be like, hey, Friday night hits and I know I have 2 shows and I'm leaving the house, and then all of a sudden I'm leaving a kid now.
True.
And a family. And crawling into bed at like 3 a.m, just fucking beat because, you know, I played 3 hours, drove 2 hours to get there, and then drove back 2 hours. Am I still into it? And I don't know yet. I'll just say
that's fair, dude.
I know
that's
that
fair.
I pick up, I have my guitar here. I brought it, you know, and I picked it up twice, and I thought that, hey, I'm going to have this seclusion. I'm going to write some more music, but it's like, I've lost that love and feeling.
I want to just take one moment to just say, number one, it's okay. You're a great musician. I've heard your music. I think that and I've been through some of the similar shit with not only with music, but with the podcast. Like I literally almost fucking quit the podcast probably, I don't know, 5 times at least at the minimum, right? Because you go through those lulls of like, man, why am I doing this? Like, do I really even like it anymore? What's my motive for doing? Like, is it ever going to turn into anything? Am I wasting? I mean, you go through all those things, and you hit something on the head when you said, am I having fun doing it anymore? Like, is it still fun? You know, that's one of the big things that whatever it is that we do, and people have asked me, how long are you going to do the podcast for? I said, man, when it quits being fun, then I'll stop. And like last year, you know, I took a couple months off because I wasn't having fun anymore. I just went through one of those spots where it just wasn't connecting to me, dude. My priorities were in a different place. My head was in a different place. I needed to make sure I stayed sober on top of everything. And then even with music, when I got out of rehab, it was so different to connect and write. It just wasn't, it was just different, you know? So anyways, not like, I just want to tell you, bro, like you're in a little speed bump, weird spot right now. You're going to pull back through, dude, and play more shows and have tons of fun, and you'll make some money. And your boy, is it baby boy or baby girl? I didn't even ask you that.
Baby boy.
Baby boy. So even that's awesome, dude. He's going to see his dad playing fucking the guitar one day. Probably want to learn how to play too. You'll be playing with him, dude, teaching him. Dude, it's awesome, bro. You're just going through a little thing right now, dude. I can assure you of that. I could feel it, bro. And it's cool that you're able to be honest with yourself with that, you know. Maybe right now it's just that's that little time, you know. You need a little break.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, I've got to look at it from a perspective of I've got a full-time job too.
Yeah.
And you know, I've got parental, you know, responsibilities now.
Sure.
And I'm not always going to have that at the very end of the day enthusiasm to get downstairs and pick up a guitar.
Yeah.
I wish I did, you know, and that's where I think I get kind of caught, is where I'm like, in me, like in my brain, I have this thing in the back of my head that says, you better not fucking skip. Like, you better not like go another day. And that's the same way, like with the gym and everything else. It's like, you're going to feel like shit if you don't fucking do it.
Yeah.
I think I'm lucky to have that, but also at the same time, it's kind of, you know, it's bad at times because it's okay to take a break, you know, and to say, like, if it's the gym, it's like, okay, my body's tired. Like, I need to take a break. Or if it's guitar, it's like, dude, I'm just tired of driving fucking every weekend, like 2 hours, you know, and then it's like I never have a day off. And so, yeah, I think it's okay. I feel okay. And
good.
I just think that, I've got here in fucking 6 days, I'm second year nominated for Best Country Act in Omaha, and got the Omaha Music Awards coming up, and it's all virtual this year.
Yeah.
Last year it was kind of a big thing, and I've got that, and I'm like, well, I have that to
dude. Yeah.
You know, like,
you know what that just reminded me of too is, and I can't, I'm pretty sure it was a quote, or someone had asked Willie Nelson back in the day. He hadn't put any music out in a while, and I'm not verbatim by this, so nobody hold me to it. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, they asked him like, why aren't you recording anything? Why aren't you, you know, playing any music, whatever? And he was like, I got to live life. And when I live life, that's what creates my music, because what I write about is my life and my experience. And so, you know what I'm saying? I think we can apply that to anything that any of us do, whether it's in, you know, whatever kind of creative outlet it is. Like, those of us who live life and we kind of write about and talk about or sing about, whatever it is, our experience, we have to go through shit so we can share it. It's just part of the process. You know what I mean? It's totally part of the process. It makes it cool. Yeah,
I totally, I'm banking on that. Like, I've got all my money in that stock.
Hell yeah. And the music awards, that's awesome, dude. In Omaha, like, congrats. Dude. Yeah, it's dope.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's one of those things where Omaha is the art scene is very not who I am. Like, that's, and for them to have a country act for even on there, I'm like, oh, they just did that because they had to. That's what I felt.
That's where your mind goes to. You start going to that self-deprivating kind of, I'm not good enough shit, which is bullshit, you know?
Well, not so much that, but it was like I was sitting at the Music Awards last year, and to me it was a huge deal. I'm like,
yeah,
whenever I moved to Omaha, I was fucking still drinking, you know, and I was fucking nobody. And I remember getting on the internet and I'm like, oh, you know, like, oh, there's an Omaha Music Awards. And I remember telling myself, like, I'll never be a part of that.
Oh, wow.
Like, I'm just not a guy that plays cover songs. And, you know, it took 5 years of work, but finally got there and it's sitting there. And I'm like, dude, I was just like, you know, my mom was there, and sometimes it's hard for me to like transcribe how I'm feeling. And to me, I was sitting there like, dude, I made it. Like where I was at 5 years ago, where I wanted to be, I'm here.
Yeah.
And
pretty cool.
I didn't win. There's guys that have been in the business for fucking years and have way stronger following than I do. But I was just like, dude, soak this in, like, just take it in. And by the end of the show, I was like, this is cool. But I was like, I already had my ideas of like my opinions of this show. And I was just kind of like, you know what, fuck these guys. Like country music is a thing. And we need to, like, I was sitting there telling myself, like, I'm going to go up there. If I win, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to make the biggest fucking scene that they've ever seen so that they know that country music is still alive.
Yeah. And that's funny.
I was playing it out in my head. And then this year it's like virtual. So
I'm not prepared to pull the wrong comment. You got to pull the Ron Burgundy. Like if you win, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared. And then you roll out like a huge, like long speech that just thanks everybody on the planet and continue to go on. So they got to bring the music on and kick you off. That's great, dude.
Yeah. In reality, it's always like I get excited about those things and I have a plan, and then I get up there and I'm like,
yeah. One of the best quotes ever, Mike Tyson. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, you know, that or something like that. Exactly. It ain't close there. I was close. I mean, but yeah, dude. No, that's good stuff, man. I'm glad we got to catch up and talk a little bit, about the book and some music and sobriety. I got, I guess, 2 questions, then we'll wrap this thing up, man. What are some of the things that you're doing or that you do just to help deal with staying sober? And then if you were going to speak to someone out there struggling, man, what would you tell them?
I think the things that I do to stay sober, of course, is like routine. Routine is just like, for me, that's the thing. If I start getting off of my routine, I start thinking about things.
Yeah.
And things to fill those spots. And I think for me, the gym, working out, that's the big one. If I'm not exercising, or if I'm not, like expanding my mind in some way, listening to podcasts, dude, like that's the biggest one for me too. And just having conversations with people nowadays. Yeah. I think like whenever you initially come out of, get sober, you don't want to talk to a lot of people. You're afraid to. You're kind of still in your shell. Yeah. And as I think, just telling people, like, as you mature in sobriety, there is a maturity phase. It becomes easier, and you want to reach out to people because you want to hear their stories. And I think people that are struggling today, and maybe on the fence, the person that I picture is the person that's like telling somebody, yeah, I'm not drinking, but they're drinking at night. I've never was around people that use drugs, so I'm not 100% sure how that goes. So, but it was all drinking. And I know that there's people that are sitting out there, like, they're writing somebody, they're saying something to somebody, there's a red flag going up, and somebody's ignoring it because they don't know how to deal with it. Yeah. And it's not always necessarily the person who needs to get sober. I believe that, like you and I, for instance, if somebody said something in particular, like, oh man, I was out until 3 a.m. drinking, and then they woke up and they just, oh, I feel like shit, you know. It was like, that's a sign to us that there's a problem, you know, especially if this is how they are every time we see them.
Exactly.
But to other people, that might just be like, oh, that's just
what they do. Yeah.
And like, oh no, that's, you can have a few sometimes, and it's like, no, I'm not your fucking puppet. Like, no, this is like, and looking back on it now, you know, that's kind of how I felt. And it's for those people that are in that position, reach out to the right people. Those people that you don't want to talk to, those are the people you need to reach out to. And
that's good.
I'm still apologizing to people to this day for shit I did.
5 years later, still going through.
I'll randomly remember something. I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
You know, like something will trigger something. So, and those are usually the people that I was always afraid to talk to because they knew.
Yeah.
And they made me feel like shit, and they didn't even have to say anything.
Yeah.
So those are, I think, advice for somebody is like, if you need to reach out to those people that make you uncomfortable. And those are the people that are going to keep you honest. So that's what I got. I don't know. It changes every time, every day.
It's good, man. No, it's good stuff. I got the links for everybody listening out there for Nick's book, Time Cap. You can follow him on Instagram at Ruck Country, NickRuckerCountry.com. And then I think I got your Facebook link in here as well. Dude, thanks for coming on the podcast, and thanks for hitting me up too, dude. It was good to reconnect and kind of check in, and hopefully we can do it again sometime too.
Hey man. Yeah, it's my pleasure. So thank you for having me.
Be sure to join us on Locals. The link for that is in the podcast or in the show notes there. You can check us out at thatsoberguy.com. Share the podcast with a friend. Appreciate you guys. Peace, love, and respect. Keep your blood clean.